Hello YouTube. Attempt number 5 at recording this. Apparently I have to be very careful on how I set the audio. Anyway, this time I am actually challenged by a guy named Sao, so I lead off with my Lucario, which I figured if I did this right, I might actually be able to get a sweep, which would be amazing. Anyway, he leads off with Mincino. I know it can't do anything to me, so it goes ahead and U-turns out, while I go ahead and set up a Swords Dance. This is actually that extreme speeder Lucario you got to see a little while ago. Anyway, he switches out and goes into his Frostlass, which it does have the paralysis, which would be a fairly good thing against Lucario, but Lucario does learn moves like Dark Pulse and Crunch, and thankfully I do actually carry the Crunch on this Lucario. It actually surprised me I could learn that Lucario could learn that in the first place. Anyway, he actually goes ahead and hits me with a Thunder Wave, which is a fairly good move, excluding the fact I do have priority. Anyway, I hit it with a Crunch, and that's going to do a ton of damage and clean up Frostlass. I was a little worried that it was going to be Focus Sash. Thankfully it wasn't, and that means Lucario is going to be able to get the secure one-hit KO. So he actually goes into Mew, and I know with that paralysis I'm not going to be able to get another Swords Dance up more than likely, so I just go for the extreme speed, hoping to get the crit. I don't get it, but I take it down to just past half, and then he goes for the Flamethrower, finishing off my paralyzed Lucario, unfortunately. But at least I did some good damage on his team, just not as much as I was hoping for. So Lucario goes down, and I actually go into Salamence here, thinking it's probably physically bulky if it's switched into Lucario, which he knows has the Crunch at the very least. So I go ahead and switch into Salamence and go for the Fire Blast, because I figured it was a bulky Mew after the damage from extreme speed. So he actually goes for the Psyshock here, and it does a ton of damage, way more than I was expecting, but I suppose that's why Mew is such a valuable Pokemon. Anyway, he switches out Mew here, goes into his Politoed, which thankfully for me, I didn't want to risk the Fire Blast missing, and I go for the Dragon Claw thinking it would be enough to finish off the Mew. And it probably would have been, but Politoed came in, and it is extremely bulky physically. I don't even get a quarter damage, and I don't want to risk getting hit by any ice moves. But I go ahead, hit it with the Draco Meteor, thinking I'll switch out this turn. Turns out this Politoed is actually a defensive build with running Toxic, so he hits me with the Toxic, and I know at this point he's probably running Protect as well, so that means I can get a free switch in. And I decided this would probably be the best time to set up some entry hazards, because it is a defensive Politoed running Toxic. It probably doesn't have Hydro Pump, and even if it does, it probably won't do nearly as much damage as, say, the Choice Spect variant of Politoed would. So I go ahead and go into Fortress here. He goes for the Protect, expecting to get some toxic damage on me, but it doesn't happen that way, and he does get a little bit of HP back, unfortunately, but what can you do? So he goes ahead and leads off with the Scald, and gets the first turn burn, which really is unfortunate, because I would have loved to get at least a layer of Toxic Spikes up, as well as the Stealth Rock. So I get my rocks up, and that's about all Fortress is going to be able to do this match because of that burn. So I'm going to actually let it die here so I can bring in another Pokemon in freely and safely, which is actually going to be my Empoleon. That burn just completely destroyed any potential Fortress had, unfortunately. Some Pokemon just cannot handle status, and Fortress, unfortunately, cannot handle burns at all. So the second Scald will finish off Fortress, and that'll be it for my entry hazards. Thankfully, he does not have a Rapid Spinner, and he doesn't have a Pokemon that actually can Rapid Spin either, or set up or he doesn't have a Pokemon that has rocks. Anyway, I go into Empoleon, and he goes for the bounce. I'm guessing to get a little bit more HP recovery and hopefully get the paralysis. But I actually turn out to not be the specially defensive or offensive type of Empoleon, and I go for the Sword Stance. And at this point, I'm very glad that he set up the rain. He goes for the bounce, and I know an Aqua Jet wouldn't do nearly enough damage because it is resisted, so I go for the Earthquake instead. And this Empoleon actually has moves to be able to hit each of its weaknesses. So the Earthquake nearly knocks it out, drops it to critical red. The leftovers give him just enough health, and here I don't want to overpredict, so I'm just going to go for an Aqua Jet. If he protects, that's okay. He's still in killable range. So he goes for the protect here. And so I go for the Aqua Jet just to finish off this guy. But of course I miss because of protect. And so I go for another protect here and kind of hope he doesn't go for the double triple protect attempt. Because he might get enough health that way to survive, threaten with the Scald, and end my potential sweep with Empoleon. But I go for the Aqua Jet again. He does not try the protect, and so I get Politoed knocked out, and that will give me some sweeping potential. He goes into his Jolteon, thinking it could possibly take the Aqua Jet and get the knockout with Thunderbolt or Thunder, whatever it's running. And so I go for the Aqua Jet. I almost switched out here because I wasn't sure if Aqua Jet would do enough damage to Jolteon, but it does, thankfully, and that will end his best Empoleon counter that I've seen so far. He goes back into Cincy. I know it can't take the Aqua Jet. It is stabbed. It is +2, and in the rain. So that Aqua Jet is going to do a ton of damage and clear out Cincy as well. I also get a crit that I don't think mattered. So we're looking pretty good here. Empoleon's doing its work. It's doing a lot of good. He goes into Mew. I don't really understand that play because an Aqua Jet will easily finish off Mew and leave him down to his last Pokemon. So I'm looking really good at this point. It's 4-0 at this point. He goes into his Haxorus, and I'm thinking this thing's probably Choice Bandit. It's going to leave a mark no matter what I do, so I'm just going to go for the Aqua Jet and hope I do enough damage that I can 2-hit KO this thing. So I go for the Aqua Jet. It hits and does decent damage, but not half, unfortunately, and it knows Superpower. So that is going to just completely annihilate Empoleon. I wasn't even aware that Haxorus could learn Superpower until this match, and I've used Haxorus several times, just never with Superpower. So that will actually finish off Empoleon, and that is unfortunate, but it did a great job. So I go into Heracross knowing I resist the Superpower. I can probably set up a Sword Stance, take the hit, and then the next turn use Endure and finish it off with a full-powered reversal with the +2. So I go ahead and set up the Sword Stance, and he goes for another Superpower, so I'm pretty sure at this point he's banded. He hits, and my HP just keeps on going down. At the 70 point, I think that's where I should be stopping, but it doesn't. Goes all the way to 0. It's a critical hit, and I am sure that one probably mattered. And so Heracross goes down, doing absolutely nothing, which is disappointing, but that's what crits have happen. So I go into Dusclops knowing that it's my best chance to stop Haxorus dead in his tracks. He goes for another Superpower. He's not going to do anything because Ghosts do not care one little bit if you use fighting moves against them all day of the week. I go for the Will-O-Wisp. It actually gets in the first turn, which surprised me because we are in the rain. The burn does some damage. Seismic Toss will knock it down to a low amount of HP after another ineffective Superpower. And then with the burn on top of that, that should be enough to finish off Haxorus, I think. So the, and it was, Seismic Toss plus the burn, finishes off Haxorus, and this game is over. It was an incredible match, 2-0 for final.